The cold December air bit at my face as I pulled into the driveway of the home I'd built with my own two hands 43 years ago. The two-story colonial in Fairfield, Connecticut, had weathered almost as many storms as I had in my 68 years. I sat in my truck for a moment, staring at the darkened windows of what used to be a home filled with laughter. Margaret had been gone for 3 years now. Cancer. The kind that doesn't give you time to prepare, though I'm not sure anyone's ever truly prepared to lose their soulmate of 41 years. I grabbed the groceries from the passenger seat, a pathetic assortment for a man living alone. Frozen dinners, coffee, bread, and a bottle of Maker's Mark that would last me at least a month. Margaret would have clicked her tongue at me. "Harold James Sullivan," she would have said, hands on her hips. "A man your age needs proper nutrition." The memory made me smile, despite the ache in my chest that never really went away. My son Michael was coming over with his wife Rebecca and their 2 children tomorrow for our monthly Sunday dinner. It was the one day of the month when this old house felt alive again. Michael had insisted we keep the tradition after Margaret passed, though Rebecca had initially protested. "It's too much work for your father," she'd said. But I knew she simply didn't want to make the 40-minute drive from their lavish home in Greenwich. Michael had overruled her, and for that, I was grateful. As I unlocked the front door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Michael. "Dad, you still up for tomorrow?" "Of course," I said, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder as I set the groceries on the kitchen counter. The granite tops had been Margaret's one splurge when we renovated the kitchen 15 years ago. "I've got everything ready. How are the kids?" "Emma and Jake are good. Emma got accepted to 3 colleges already." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's my girl. Harvard still in the running?" Michael chuckled. "Yeah, we're waiting to hear back. Listen, Dad, Rebecca's she's been a bit off lately. Just wanted to warn you." I sighed. Rebecca had never made it a secret that she thought Michael had married beneath his station. He was a successful investment banker and she came from old money. I was just a building contractor who'd worked his way up from nothing. "Everything okay between you two?" A pause. Too long. "Yeah, sure, just work stress, you know how it is." But I did know. After 41 years of marriage, I recognized the sound of trouble. "Well, I'll see you all tomorrow at 1. I'm making Margaret's pot roast." "She'd be proud, Dad. Good night." After hanging up, I poured myself a finger of bourbon and sat at the kitchen table looking at the empty chair across from me. "Looks like trouble in paradise, Maggie," I said to the silence. It had become a habit, talking to her as if she might answer. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between wakefulness and sleep, I could almost hear her voice. The next morning I woke early as usual, 5:30 a.m. A lifetime of construction work had made it impossible to sleep in, even in retirement. I spent the morning preparing the pot roast, following Margaret's recipe card to the letter. Her handwriting, elegant and precise, was a comfort as I worked. By noon, the house smelled like she was still here, moving around the kitchen with the grace that had captivated me from the moment I saw her at a high school dance in 1972. The doorbell rang at 1:15. Michael was always punctual, which meant Rebecca had delayed them. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find my son, tall and handsome in a casual sweater, with Emma and Jake behind him. "Where's Rebecca?" I asked after hugging each of them. Michael's smile tightened. "Parking the car. She wanted to take a call." Emma, now 18 and looking more like her grandmother every day, rolled her eyes. "She's always on the phone lately. It's like super annoying." "Emma," Michael warned, but I could see the agreement in his eyes. Jake, 14 and already taller than his sister, headed straight for the kitchen. "Is that Grandma's pot roast?" "Awesome." We settled in the living room, the kids filling me in on school and activities. Rebecca finally graced us with her presence 20 minutes later, not bothering to apologize for her tardiness. At 45, she was still beautiful, blonde hair expertly highlighted, her figure maintained by expensive trainers and strict diets. But there was a hardness to her beauty that had always put me off. "Harold?" she said with a thin smile, air-kissing my cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and privilege. "Rebecca, glad you could join us," I replied, keeping my tone neutral for Michael's sake. During dinner, I noticed the tension between my son and his wife. They barely spoke to each other, and when they did, their words were clipped and formal. The kids carried most of the conversation, with Jake excitedly telling me about his science project and Emma discussing her college applications. "Harvard's my first choice, Grandpa," Emma said, her eyes bright. "I want to study pre-law." "Your grandmother would be so proud," I told her. my throat tight with emotion. She always said you had the brains and the determination to do whatever you set your mind to. Rebecca made a small noise that might have been a scoff. Let's not put too much pressure on her, Harold. Harvard is extremely competitive and there are plenty of other excellent schools. I saw Emma's face fall slightly. I think it's good to aim high, I countered gently. Emma's got what it takes. Well, not everyone can get by on hard work alone in this world, Rebecca said, cutting her pot roast with precise movements. Connections matter. Unfortunately, Sullivan isn't exactly a name that opens doors in the Ivy League. The table fell silent. Michael stared at his plate, his jaw clenched. Mom, Emma whispered, mortified. I'm just being realistic, Rebecca shrugged. Anyway, we might not be able to afford Harvard without scholarship money. There have been some financial adjustments recently. Michael's head snapped up. Rebecca, not now, I looked between them. Everything okay, son? Fine, Dad, just some market fluctuations affecting the portfolio. Nothing to worry about. Rebecca laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Nothing to worry about. That's rich, Michael. Almost as rich as we used to be. She turned to me. Did you know your son lost almost $200,000 last quarter on a bad investment? Michael's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. That's enough, Rebecca. The kids should know what they're dealing with, she continued, taking a sip of her wine. Financial instability isn't something to hide, especially when their college funds are at stake. Emma's eyes widened. Dad, is my college fund okay? Yes, sweetheart, Michael assured her quickly. Your college fund is in a separate account, it's untouched. Rebecca rolled her eyes. For now. I said that's enough. Michael's voice was low and dangerous. I cleared my throat. Who's ready for dessert? I made your grandmother's apple pie. The rest of the meal was strained, with Rebecca making thinly veiled jabs at Michael's financial decisions and Michael growing increasingly withdrawn. After dessert, I suggested the kids help me clear the table while Michael and Rebecca took a moment in the living room. The raised voices that soon followed confirmed my suspicions that their marriage was in serious trouble. Emma loaded the dishwasher with practiced efficiency, her face tight with concern. They've been fighting a lot, she confided in a low voice. Mom's been acting weird for months now. Weird how? I asked, keeping my tone casual as I scraped leftovers into containers. Jake, who was wrapping the remaining pie, snorted. She's always on her phone, texting, and she keeps having these lunch meetings that last for hours. Emma shot her brother a warning look, but it was too late. My old heart sank. I'd seen enough marriages in my time to recognize the signs. I'm sure your mother has a lot on her plate, I said diplomatically. Work can be demanding. She doesn't even work, Jake exclaimed. She just spends Dad's money. Jake, Emma hissed, shut up! The living room suddenly went quiet, and a moment later, Rebecca stormed into the kitchen, her face flushed with anger. We're leaving, she announced. Kids, get your coats. Michael appeared behind her, his expression a mixture of fury and defeat. Dad, I'm sorry about this. Don't apologize to him, Rebecca snapped. He's probably loving this. Poor Michael, failing at his marriage just like his father warned him he would. The kitchen fell silent. I felt a cold anger rise in my chest. I never said any such thing. Please, Rebecca scoffed. You never thought I was good enough for your precious son. You and that wife of yours looking down on me from your moral high ground. Don't you dare speak about my mother like that, Michael warned, his voice dangerously low. Rebecca turned to face him, her beautiful face twisted with contempt. What are you going to do about it, Michael? Run crying to Daddy. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? When in doubt, ask Daddy for advice. A grown man still seeking his father's approval. She laughed bitterly. And you wonder why I've lost respect for you? I stepped forward, placing a hand on Michael's arm. This isn't the time or place, Rebecca. The children— Oh, spare me the family values lecture, she interrupted. A lonely old widower doesn't get to tell me how to handle my family. Emma gasped. Mom, Rebecca turned to my granddaughter. What? It's true. Men like your grandfather think they know everything about loyalty and family, but the minute they lose their wives, they fall apart. They can't even feed themselves properly. She gestured dismissively at me. Look at him, living in this mausoleum, talking to a ghost. A widowed man doesn't deserve anyone's trust. They're all just waiting to replace what they lost. The cruel words hung in the air. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Michael moved then, stepping between his wife and me. That's enough, he said, his voice steady but trembling with rage. You will not speak to my father that way in his own home, ever. Rebecca stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. My, the puppy has teeth after all. She grabbed her purse from the counter. I'll wait in the car. Don't be long. After she left, the kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the old clock that had hung on the wall since before the kids were born. Dad, I'm so sorry, Michael began, but I waved him off. It's okay, son. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. Emma came over and hugged me fiercely. She had no right to say those things, Grandpa. No right at all. Jake looked confused and upset. Why is Mom being such a... Jake, Michael warned. I ruffled my grandson's hair. It's complicated, buddy. Adult relationships sometimes hit rough patches. This feels more like a canyon than a patch, Emma muttered. Michael sighed deeply. We should go. I'll call you tomorrow, Dad. After they left, I sat alone at the kitchen table, Rebecca's words echoing in my head. A widowed man doesn't deserve anyone's trust. Was that how people saw me? A pathetic old man living in the past. The thought stung more than I cared to admit. I poured myself another bourbon and raised it to Margaret's empty chair. Well, Maggie, that went about as well as a concrete life preserver. I took a sip, feeling the familiar burn. Something's not right with those two, and I think we both know what it probably is. The next morning, I was surprised by a knock at my door just after 8 a.m. Michael stood on my porch looking like he hadn't slept all night. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his hair uncombed, stubble on his jaw, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Son, what's happened? He stepped inside, his movements mechanical. You were right, Dad. You and the kids. All those lunches, the texting, the late nights. His voice broke. Rebecca's been having an affair. I guided him to the kitchen and poured him a cup of coffee. How did you find out? After we left here yesterday, we had the fight to end all fights. She stormed out, said she was staying at a hotel. I was so angry I decided to check our phone records, something I've never done before. He looked up at me, his eyes hollow. Hundreds of calls and texts to the same number over the last 6 months. So I called it. And? A man answered. When I asked who he was, he laughed and said, "You must be the husband." Just like that, like it was some kind of joke. Michael's hands shook as he held his coffee mug. He told me they'd been seeing each other for almost a year. A year, Dad. While I was working 60-hour weeks to maintain the lifestyle she demanded, she was... He couldn't finish the sentence. I sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, son, truly sorry. It gets worse, he continued, his voice flat. I confronted her when she came home this morning to change clothes. She didn't even deny it. She just shrugged and said she deserved to be happy. Like our 20 years of marriage meant nothing. Who is he? I asked, though I wasn't sure it mattered. His name is Richard Townsend. He's a client at the firm, or was. Divorced, filthy rich from family money. Apparently they met at the firm's Christmas party last year. Michael ran a hand through his hair. She said she wants a divorce, that she and Richard are meant to be together. Her exact words. I felt a surge of anger on my son's behalf. Rebecca had always been materialistic, but I never thought she would betray Michael like this. What are you going to do? I don't know, Dad. I just don't know. He looked up suddenly, his expression changing. But that's not the worst part. When I was checking our accounts this morning, I found something strange. Large withdrawals over the past few months. Money missing from our joint savings. Almost $300,000 gone. My blood ran cold. What? She's been siphoning money. Preparing to leave, I guess. But here's the thing, I can't prove it was her. We both have access to the accounts. He looked at me, desperation in his eyes. And that's not all. Remember when she mentioned my investment losses at dinner? Those weren't losses, Dad. That was money I had set aside for Emma's and Jake's education, in an account only Rebecca and I knew about. It's gone, almost emptied. The college funds? Technically safe for now. They're in trust accounts I set up years ago. Rebecca can't touch those without my signature. But the rest... Dad, I think she's been planning this for a long time. Stockpiling cash for her new life with Richard. I felt sick. Not just for Michael, but for Emma and Jake. Their mother had not only betrayed their father, but had stolen their future security. Have you talked to a lawyer? Michael nodded. I called Bill Wilson first thing this morning. He's meeting me at 11. Bill was an old friend of mine, one of the best divorce attorneys in Connecticut. He said to document everything, but without proof that she took the money specifically, it might be difficult to recover, especially since she's authorized on the accounts. What about the kids? They don't know yet. They stayed at friends' houses last night after our fight. I need to pick them up this afternoon. He looked lost. Like the little boy who had once come to me with a broken bicycle. Only this was something I couldn't fix with tools and patience. Bring them here, I said firmly. You all can stay as long as you need to. This house has plenty of room. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Thanks, Dad. I don't know what I'd do without you. As he left for his meeting with Bill, I sat in my quiet kitchen, anger building inside me. Rebecca's cruel words from yesterday took on a new meaning now. A widowed man doesn't deserve anyone's trust. She'd been projecting her own faithlessness onto me, onto everyone. My son had given her everything, a beautiful home, private schools for the kids, luxury vacations, designer clothes, and she had repaid his devotion with the ultimate betrayal. Over the next few days, Michael and the kids settled into my home. Emma and Jake were devastated by their mother's betrayal, especially when they learned she had drained accounts meant for their future. Rebecca, meanwhile, had moved in with Richard, taking only her personal belongings and leaving the family home in Greenwich standing empty. She said she's filing for divorce next week, Michael told me as we sat on the back porch one evening, a week after that disastrous Sunday dinner. The kids were inside watching a movie, finding comfort in the simple routines of family life. Bill says she's hired Marianne Cooper. I whistled low. Marianne Cooper was known as the Barracuda in divorce court circles. She specialized in getting exorbitant settlements for wives, deserved or not. Bill will handle it, I assured him. He's seen her tactics before. Michael shook his head. It's not just the divorce, Dad. I'm worried about the money. Bill says without evidence that she specifically took it, the court might just view it as mutual spending from joint accounts. We'd have to split what's left 50-50. That's not right, I said, anger rising again. She stole that money to fund her new life with her lover. I know, but proving it, he sighed deeply. And there's something else. The firm is conducting an internal review of all my clients' accounts. Apparently, Rebecca told Richard about some of my investment strategies for clients. How's been using that information? I stared at him. Insider trading? Potentially. I didn't tell her anything specific, but she overheard things, saw documents I brought home. He looked utterly defeated. If the firm finds even a hint of impropriety, I could lose my license, my career would be over. This was worse than I thought. Rebecca wasn't just leaving Michael. She was systematically destroying everything he had worked for. We need to fight back, I said firmly. How, Dad? She holds all the cards. The money's gone. My career is hanging by a thread, and she's painting me as a workaholic who neglected her. I thought for a long moment, remembering something Margaret used to say. The truth always finds its way to the light, Harold. Our job is sometimes just to clear a path for it. What if we could prove she took the money? I asked slowly. What if we could show she was planning this for months? Michael looked up. How? I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But everyone leaves a trail, son, especially people who think they're clever. That night, after Michael and the kids had gone to bed, I sat at my computer in the small den off the living room. I'd never been particularly tech-savvy. That had been Margaret's domain, surprisingly. She'd embraced computers in her job as a high school librarian and had kept up with technology even in retirement. But I'd learned enough from her to be dangerous. I started by searching for Richard Townsend. He wasn't hard to find. Heir to the Townsend publishing fortune, divorced 3 times, board member for several companies. His social media presence was minimal but revealing. Photos of charity galas, sailing on his yacht, skiing in Aspen, and there in a picture from a benefit 6 months ago was Rebecca in the background, watching him from across the room with unmistakable hunger in her eyes. I dug deeper, looking for connections between them. A comment here, a tagged location there. They had been careless. Perhaps believing that Michael was too busy or too trusting to notice. I found evidence of them at the same restaurants, the same resorts, often when Michael was away on business trips. But this wasn't enough. We needed proof about the money. The next morning, I called Bill Wilson directly. Harold, he greeted me warmly. How are you holding up? Michael told me you've taken them all in. We're managing, I said. Listen, Bill, I need your advice. Is there any way to trace where that missing money went? Bill sighed. We're trying, Harold. But Rebecca was careful. She made cash withdrawals, mostly. Unless we can show where that cash ended up, it's difficult to prove she took it for herself rather than for family expenses. What about bank records? Credit card statements? Michael's given us everything he has access to, but Rebecca's been opening new accounts, ones Michael wasn't aware of. Without her cooperation or a court order with specific cause, we can't access those. I thought for a moment. What about her phone? Michael mentioned hundreds of calls and texts. Phone records only show that communication occurred, not the content. Unless what? Unless there are saved messages on devices Michael has legal access to. Family computers, tablets, that sort of thing. After hanging up, I called Michael at work. Son, does Rebecca ever use the family computer at home? The one in the study? Sometimes, he said. She has her own laptop, but she occasionally used the desktop for printing or when her battery was dead. Why? Is it possible her email account is still logged in on that computer? There was a pause. Maybe. I haven't been back to the house much since everything happened. Dad, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time we went home, your home, and did some investigating. That evening, Michael and I drove to the Greenwich house while Emma and Jake stayed behind with a neighbor. The sprawling Tudor-style home sat dark and empty, a monument to a family life that had been built on shifting sands. Michael unlocked the door, and we stepped into the silent foyer. Everything looked the same. Expensive furniture, artwork on the walls, family photos arranged just so, yet everything had changed. The computer's in the study, Michael said, leading the way through the house. The desktop computer was a high-end model, sleek and powerful. Michael switched it on, and we waited as it booted up. I don't know if this is legal, Dad, he said nervously. Bill said we have to be careful not to do anything that could hurt our case. This is your computer. In your house, I reminded him, and we're not hacking anything, we're just looking at what's freely available. The computer finished starting up, and Michael clicked on the Chrome browser. She usually uses Chrome, he explained, and she's the type to save passwords. Sure enough, when he went to Gmail, her saved account appeared in the login field, Rebecca's personal email. Michael hesitated, his finger hovering over the mouse. You don't have to do this, I told him. We can find another way. He shook his head. No, I need to know the truth. All of it. He clicked the login button, and to our surprise, it went straight to Rebecca's inbox without asking for a password. What we found over the next hour made my blood boil. Emails between Rebecca and Richard going back 14 months, long before the affair had become physical, according to what she'd told Michael. They had been planning this, methodically and coldly. Look at this one, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. He pointed to an email from Rebecca to Richard dated nearly a year ago. I've started moving money as we discussed. Small amounts that won't raise flags. Em never checks the accounts anyway. Too busy making more money for me to spend. By summer, I should have enough set aside for a fresh start. Just be patient. E.R. There were dozens more like it, detailing how she was systematically draining their accounts, even selling jewelry Michael had given her and depositing the cash in a secret account. She had been preparing for her exit for over a year, while maintaining the facade of a devoted wife and mother. But the most damning evidence came in the form of a spreadsheet attached to an email sent just 3 weeks ago. It listed all the withdrawals she had made, with dates and amounts, along with notations about which account the money had come from. The last line showed a total $427,136. That's more than I thought, Michael whispered, staring at the screen. She took almost $500,000. I placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. Now we have proof, son. This changes everything. There's more, he said, scrolling through the emails. Look at this thread with Richard from 2 months ago. They're discussing information about my clients. She was photographing documents I brought home. I felt sick. That could ruin you. It could put me in jail, Dad. Michael's face had gone pale. This isn't just about the divorce anymore. This is criminal. We spent another hour gathering evidence, forwarding key emails to Michael's account, and taking screenshots of the most incriminating messages. The picture that emerged was one of calculated betrayal. Rebecca hadn't just fallen in love with another man. She had orchestrated a systematic campaign to extract maximum financial benefit before leaving Michael. As we were about to leave, Michael paused in the doorway of the master bedroom, looking at the king-sized bed he had once shared with Rebecca. I keep asking myself what I did wrong, he said quietly. Was I not attentive enough? Did I work too much? What made her do this? I stood beside him, remembering similar questions I had asked myself when my first wife, Michael's mother, had left us when he was just 7 years old. Before I met Margaret, there had been a dark time of self-doubt and recrimination. "This isn't about you, son," I said firmly. "Some people are just wired wrong. They take and never feel they have enough. Rebecca's betrayal is about her character, not yours." He nodded slowly. "I just keep thinking about the kids. How am I going to explain to them that their mother not only cheated, but stole their future?" "One day at a time," I said. The same words Margaret had said to me decades ago when I was struggling as a single father. "We'll get through this together." On the drive back to Fairfield, Michael called Bill and told him what we'd found. The lawyer was cautiously optimistic, but warned us about getting our hopes too high. "Email evidence can be tricky in court," he explained. "We'll need to get a forensic expert to verify the authenticity, but this is definitely a game changer, Michael. Good work." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and strategic planning. Bill brought in a computer forensics expert who properly extracted and authenticated the emails and spreadsheets we had found. He also engaged a private investigator to track down where the money had gone. "She opened an account in the Cayman Islands," the PI reported during a meeting in Bill's office. "Classic offshore move to hide assets. But here's the interesting part. She didn't just put the money there for herself. She transferred a significant portion to Richard Townsend's existing account." "Can we prove that?" Bill asked. The PI smiled. "Better than that. Richard Townsend made a critical mistake. He used some of that money to purchase stock in a company just before they announced a major acquisition, a company that happens to be a client of Michael's firm." Michael's eyes widened. "Insider trading." "Exactly," the PI confirmed. "And the timing aligns perfectly with those photographed documents Rebecca sent him." Bill leaned back in his chair, a satisfied expression on his face. "This changes our entire strategy. Michael, we're not just going to defend against Rebecca's demands now. We're going to go on the offensive." Instead of responding to Rebecca's divorce filing, Bill prepared a countersuit that included charges of theft, fraud, and conspiracy. He also prepared a separate filing detailing the evidence of insider trading, which he planned to submit to both the SEC and the U.S. Attorney's Office. "We're not going to file these immediately," he explained to Michael and me. "First, we'll give Rebecca and her attorney one chance to settle on our terms." "Which are?" Michael asked. "Full return of all stolen funds plus interest, full custody of the children, the family home, and she waives any claim to alimony or additional marital assets." Bill smiled grimly. "In exchange, we don't expose her criminal activities to the authorities." "Will she go for it?" I asked, skeptical that a woman as greedy as Rebecca would surrender so much. "She might not, but her lawyer will advise her to," Bill replied. "Marianne Cooper is aggressive, but she's not stupid. Once she sees what we have, she'll know her client is facing potential criminal charges. The smart play is to cut losses and run." The meeting with Rebecca and her attorney was set for the following Monday at Bill's office. Michael was a bundle of nerves that morning, alternating between righteous anger and gnawing anxiety. "What if she calls our bluff?" he asked as we drove to the meeting. I had insisted on coming for moral support, though I would wait outside during the actual negotiations. "It's not a bluff," I reminded him. "That's the key, son. We have the evidence. Rebecca made a fundamental mistake that a lot of people make when they're doing something wrong. She got careless because she thought she was smarter than everyone else." When we arrived at Bill's office, Rebecca and Marianne Cooper were already there, both impeccably dressed and wearing nearly identical expressions of cold confidence. Rebecca barely glanced at Michael as we entered the reception area, but I caught a flicker of something. Surprise? Concern? When she saw me. "I'll be right out here," I told Michael, squeezing his shoulder before he followed Bill into the conference room. The meeting lasted almost 3 hours. I waited patiently, thumbing through outdated magazines and making small talk with Bill's receptionist. Finally, the conference room door opened, and Bill emerged, followed by Michael. "We've reached a preliminary agreement," Bill announced, his professional demeanor not quite hiding his satisfaction. "Ms. Cooper and her client have requested a brief recess to confer privately." "How did it go?" I asked Michael once we were alone in Bill's office. Michael ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted but relieved. "She folded, Dad, just like Bill said she would. Once they saw the evidence, especially the insider trading stuff, Marianne practically had a stroke. So she's accepting our terms? Mostly, she's fighting on a few details, but the big things, the money, the house custody, she's giving in on those. She knows she's cornered." Michael shook his head in disbelief. "You should have seen her face when Bill laid out those emails. For once in her life, Rebecca was speechless. When the meeting reconvened, I remained in Bill's office, but I could hear raised voices from the conference room, mostly Marianne Cooper's, sounding increasingly desperate. Another hour passed before Bill appeared at the door, a document in hand. "It's done," he said simply. "She signed the preliminary agreement. We'll file the formal settlement with the court tomorrow." The terms were even better than we had hoped. Rebecca would return all the stolen funds, with interest. Michael would retain the family home and full custody of the children, with Rebecca granted only supervised visitation until a court-appointed psychologist determined she was not a flight risk. She waived all claims to Michael's assets, pension, and future earnings. In exchange, Michael agreed not to press criminal charges or report the insider trading to the authorities. "What about Richard?" I asked as we reviewed the agreement. "That's the interesting part," Bill said with a small smile. "Rebecca threw him under the bus entirely. She provided a sworn statement that she had stolen the documents without Michael's knowledge and given them to Richard, who knew they contained privileged information. She claims Richard pressured her to get the information, promising to leave his wife for her if she did." "Wife?" Michael looked up sharply. "Richard told me he was divorced." Bill shook his head. "Another lie. He's very much married to wife number 3. According to Rebecca, he promised to divorce once they had enough money set aside. Money that included what she stole from you. So the whole thing was a con," I said, disgusted but not surprised. "More or less," Bill agreed. "And now Rebecca has realized she's the one who got conned. Richard has apparently gone radio silent since he learned about our evidence. My guess is he's already looking for a place to hide that Cayman Islands money where Rebecca can't find it." Michael sat back, looking stunned. "All this time, I thought she left because she fell in love with someone else. But it was just about money. It was always about money with her. I thought about Margaret then, about our modest life together. We had never been rich, but we had been wealthy in all the ways that mattered. I wished Rebecca could have understood the difference." The next few weeks were challenging but healing. Michael and the kids moved back into the Greenwich house, reclaiming their home and beginning to rebuild their lives. Rebecca, true to the agreement, transferred the stolen funds back to Michael's accounts and moved to a small apartment in White Plains. Richard Townsend, facing potential SEC investigation thanks to an anonymous tip, which Bill assured us he had nothing to do with, winking as he said it, had fled to a country without an extradition treaty with the U.S. One evening in late January, nearly 2 months after that fateful Sunday dinner, Michael invited me over for dinner at the Greenwich house. Emma and Jake had prepared the meal, Margaret's pot roast recipe, which I had taught them, and the dining room was filled with laughter for the first time in a long while. After dinner, while the kids were clearing the table, Michael handed me a small box. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "Just open it, Dad." Inside was a key to the house. "I don't understand." Michael smiled. "It's so you can come and go as you please. This is your home too, Dad. Always has been. Always will be." He glanced toward the kitchen where Emma and Jake were laughing about something. "We need you here. Not just now, but always." I felt a lump in my throat. "Your mother would be proud of you, son. The way you've handled all this, protecting the kids, keeping the family together." "I learned from the best," he said simply. "When Mom left us, you could have fallen apart, but you didn't. You kept going for me, and then when Margaret died, you did the same thing. You kept going." I thought about Rebecca's cruel words that day. A widowed man doesn't deserve anyone's trust. How wrong she had been. Trust wasn't about never experiencing loss or pain. It was about how you carried on despite them. It was about putting one foot in front of the other day after day for the people who counted on you. "We keep going," I agreed. "That's what family does." Later that night, as I drove back to my empty house in Fairfield, I found myself talking to Margaret again. "We did good with him, Maggie," I said to the quiet car. "Despite everything, he turned out right." And for a moment, just a moment, I could have sworn I heard her voice, soft and clear as it had been in life. "Of course he did, Harold. He's your son." 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Michael had been cleared of any wrongdoing by his firm and was thriving professionally. Emma had been accepted to Harvard on a partial scholarship and was preparing to leave for college in the fall. Jake had joined the school baseball team and was showing real talent. Rebecca, after completing court-mandated therapy, had begun supervised visits with the children, though Emma refused to see her. As for me, I had finally begun considering selling my house in Fairfield. I spent most weekends at Michael's place anyway, and the old colonial held more ghosts than memories now. It was time to move forward, as Margaret would have wanted. On a warm Saturday in June, I was helping Michael clean out the garage when he received a text that made him freeze. "What is it?" I asked, setting down the box I was carrying. "It's from Rebecca's sister, Diane." He looked up, his expression a mixture of shock and vindication. "Rebecca and Richard got married last weekend in Mexico." I raised my eyebrows. "I thought Richard was already married." "Apparently he got divorced." "Again?" Michael shook his head, a small, sad smile playing at his lips. "Diane says Rebecca's been bragging about how wealthy they are, how they're buying a villa in Spain." "History repeats itself," I murmured. "Poor woman never learns." Michael pocketed his phone and returned to sorting through old sporting equipment. "You know what's strange, Dad? I don't even feel angry anymore, just sad. Sad that she threw away a family who loved her for someone who will probably betray her just like she betrayed me." I thought about karma then, about how the wheels of justice sometimes turn slowly but inexorably. Rebecca had chosen money and excitement over family and loyalty. She had sown betrayal and would, I suspected, reap the same. "Some people spend their whole lives chasing happiness in all the wrong places," I said. "Your mother, Margaret, used to say that real happiness isn't found in what you have, but in who you love and who loves you back." Michael nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I miss her wisdom. She would have known exactly what to say to Emma and Jake through all this. She would have said that sometimes the people we love make choices that hurt us, but that doesn't diminish the love we gave them." I placed a hand on his shoulder, and she would have been right. That evening, as we sat on Michael's back patio watching Jake practice his pitching in the yard, Emma came out with a tray of lemonade, Margaret's recipe, which she had found in my old recipe box. "Grandpa," she said, sitting beside me, "I've been thinking about something. For my college admission essay, I wrote about resilience and family legacies, about how you rebuilt your life twice, after Grandma left and after Margaret died, about how Dad is doing the same thing now." I felt a surge of pride and love for this remarkable young woman, so wise beyond her years. "What was your conclusion?" She smiled, her eyes so like Margaret's, bright with certainty. "That strength isn't about never falling down. It's about how many times you get back up." She squeezed my hand. "We come from a long line of people who get back up, Grandpa." As the summer sun set over the Connecticut countryside, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn, I thought about the journey we had all taken since that cold December day when Rebecca had uttered those cruel words. A widowed man doesn't deserve anyone's trust. The irony wasn't lost on me that her betrayal had ultimately strengthened the bonds of trust within our true family, Michael, Emma, Jake, and me. 3 years after Margaret's death, I had finally found peace with her absence, though I still talked to her sometimes in the quiet moments. And now, watching my son and grandchildren, I knew with absolute certainty that despite all the losses and betrayals, I was a wealthy man indeed. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at Michael's house addressed to both of us. The return address was a law firm in Mexico City. Inside was a brief note from an attorney representing Richard Townsend's third wife, along with copies of bank statements showing transfers from Richard's Cayman account to a new account in Zurich, transfers that had begun the day after his wedding to Rebecca. "He's cleaning her out," Michael said, a note of disbelief in his voice as he reviewed the documents, "just like she did to me." I thought of a saying Margaret had cross-stitched and framed years ago, which still hung in my kitchen. "As ye sow, so shall ye reap." Should we warn her? Michael asked, and I could see the fundamental decency in him. Even after everything Rebecca had done, he still didn't want to see her hurt. I considered the question carefully. "Would she have warned you?" He smiled ruefully. "No. She would have watched me drown and complained that I was getting her shoes wet in the process." We decided not to intervene. Rebecca had made her choices again and again. Now she would live with the consequences. 6 months later, Emma called from Harvard with news. Rebecca had reached out to her through social media, asking for money. Apparently, Richard had disappeared with everything, leaving Rebecca stranded in Barcelona with nothing but the clothes on her back and maxed-out credit cards. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I said she should call Dad," Emma replied, "that he knows what it's like to be betrayed by someone you trusted." Rebecca never called. Instead, she showed up one snowy evening in December at my house in Fairfield, which I still hadn't sold. I was surprised to find her on my doorstep, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled, her designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a shabby coat. "Harold," she said, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "I need to talk to Michael. He's not answering my calls. I thought, maybe you could help." I studied her for a moment. She looked older, diminished somehow. Life had clearly dealt her the harsh lessons she had tried to inflict on others. "Why should I help you, Rebecca?" I asked, not unkindly but firmly. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "Because I have nowhere else to go. Richard took everything, just like—" She trailed off. "Just like you took from Michael," I finished for her. "The difference is, Michael earned what you stole. What did you do to earn Richard's loyalty?" She flinched as if I had struck her. "I know I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I'm still Emma and Jake's mother. I just want a chance to make things right." I thought about what Margaret would do in this situation. She had been firm but compassionate, able to maintain boundaries while still showing kindness. "I'll tell Michael you came by," I said finally. "The rest is up to him." "Thank you," she whispered, turning to leave. Then she paused. "You were right, you know. About me. About everything. A widowed man deserves trust more than most. He knows the value of what he's lost." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for what I said that day. I was projecting my own faithlessness onto you." After she left, I called Michael and told him about Rebecca's visit. He was silent for a long moment. "What do you think I should do, Dad?" he asked finally. "I think you should follow your heart, son. You've always been a better person than she deserved." In the end, Michael agreed to meet with Rebecca, not to reconcile, that bridge had been thoroughly burned, but to discuss a path forward that would allow her some role in the children's lives. He helped her find a modest apartment and a job as an administrative assistant at a friend's accounting firm. It wasn't the luxury life she had once known, but it was a chance to rebuild with dignity. Over time, Jake began spending occasional weekends with her. Emma was more reluctant, but eventually agreed to monthly dinners. Small steps toward healing, though the scars would always remain. As for me, I finally sold the house in Fairfield and moved into the guest house on Michael's property, close enough to be present in their daily lives, but with enough separation to maintain my independence. On warm evenings, I would sit on the small porch, talking to Margaret about the day's events. Sometimes I even imagined her answers. "You were right, Maggie," I would say. "The truth always finds its way to the light. Sometimes we just have to clear a path for it." And in those quiet moments, I could almost feel her hand on my shoulder, hear her gentle reminder that love, real, loyal, enduring love, was the only wealth that truly mattered in this life. A year after Rebecca's return, I received an unexpected letter from my first wife, Michael's mother, who had left us decades ago. She was ill, she wrote, and wanted to make amends before it was too late. Would I be willing to meet? I showed the letter to Michael, leaving the decision entirely in his hands. His mother's abandonment had shaped his childhood, just as Rebecca's betrayal had now marked his adult life. "What do you think, Dad?" he asked, echoing the question he had asked about Rebecca. I thought carefully before answering. "I think forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let it control your future." He nodded slowly. "Then I think we should meet her. Together." As we drove to the nursing home where his mother now lived, Michael asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Do you think you can ever really trust again after betrayal?" "Completely, I mean." I considered all I had experienced, the loss of my first wife, the blessing of finding Margaret, the pain of losing her to cancer, the complicated joy of helping my son through his own marital collapse. "I think trust is like a muscle," I said finally. "When it's injured, it needs time to heal. It may never be exactly the same, but with proper care it can become strong again, maybe even stronger in some ways because you know its value." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Rebecca said something similar when we last talked. She said she never understood the value of trust until she lost it, both giving and receiving it." "Some lessons come at a high price," I observed. "Too high," Michael agreed. Then he smiled slightly. "But I'm learning to trust again, Dad, slowly. And you know who taught me how?" "Who?" "You did. A widowed man who never lost his capacity for trust, despite everything." I thought about Rebecca's cruel words that day, now transformed by time and truth into something approaching wisdom. A widowed man doesn't deserve anyone's trust. How wrong she had been, and how right she eventually became. Trust isn't earned by never experiencing loss. It's earned by how you carry that loss, with dignity, with honesty, with an open heart that refuses to be diminished by pain. It's earned by getting up, again and again, and clearing a path for truth and love to find their way back to the light. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.